Hello and welcome to the first video in a new video series here on my channel Hiking Hermit, in which I want to talk about my hike on the Pacific Crest Trail. It is now exactly 10 years since I did this hike, and I want to go through my photos with you and see what I can still remember, what had shaped me, what still inspires me today, and what I may have forgotten when I see the photos. And simply what is still on my mind today, because I can tell you this much right now. Hardly a day goes by without me thinking about some situation on the trail at least once. It really was a life-changing experience, this hike. And yes, I want to honor this great time with you by taking another look at it. So, this first video of the series comes out exactly 10 years after I took my first steps on a PCT. A little bit of info before that, we went via New York, so I walked the trail with my girlfriend at the time, and we flew via New York to San Diego. Met another hiker from Germany right there at the airport, Andy, who we would spend a lot of time with. And we were then picked up by Scout and Frodo's helpers at the San Diego airport. Scout and Frodo, probably all of you know, are very famous trail angels from San Diego who are no longer active but have been hosting hikers for, 10 years or more. I'm not sure. And staying with them was really great because it was a perfect start to this adventure, and we got the chance to arrive here at first. So it was the first time that any of us Germans went to the United States, and it wasn't so easy to organize everything because it was 2015. I just had gotten my first smartphone, and there was not so much information out there as it is now. And we needed SIM cards, we needed food and whatnot. And yes, we were able to organize everything wonderfully from there. We also had our tent sent to Scout and Frodo's place. And then there was delicious food, good conversations, lots of tips from Scout and Frodo who had walked the trail themselves. And above all of that, you got the chance to meet the people that you would spend time with on the trail. And we actually got to know people there who we were still together with on the very last day. So we started and finished the trail together. Just a little spoiler. But let's go straight into it now. We were driven to the border in the morning by Scout and Frodo and their neighbors. Here we can see Scout. I think we started at 5 o'clock in the morning or at 4. I can't remember exactly in any case, but it was very early. And we drove in a convoy of cars to the Mexican border, and it was the most amazing feeling I'd ever experienced, I think. So you have to imagine it like this. I'd been looking forward to walking this trail for years, and I've watched vlogs, I'd read blogs. It was the most amazing feeling I'd ever experienced, I think. So you have to imagine it like this. I'd been looking forward to walk this trail for years. I had watched countless vlogs, read blogs of hikers who did this before, and I already knew quite a lot about the trail. And I already had seen some very iconic things, and so of course the Southern Terminus point, this wooden thing here, which marks the southern point of the PCT. And I had seen it on such a lot of photos and videos, and then to actually be standing there, it was just a very crazy feeling. And it was probably the same for everyone because you could really feel the euphoria in the air, the anticipation, and perhaps also the worries and fears. But above all, everyone was incredibly excited and thrilled to finally get started after perhaps years of planning, years of anticipation. So, of course, we took our photos in front of the border at the signpost, which is simply obligatory. Everyone takes their photo there. Everyone signs the logbook, which is on the back here. That was our small crew from the first day. Some of them I never saw again, and others, as I said, I saw again and again. Of course, I also had to touch Mexico somehow, which is also a must, I think. It would be easier today because there's this weird white fence thing now where you can just stick your hand through, but through this thing I just stuck my index finger so that I had really walked from Mexico to Canada. Yes, and then of course there were the first trail posts, trail markers that I've also already seen 10 times in some vlogs and blogs, and of course I still had to take photos of myself with them, it's obvious. They're just such iconic things that you have to do. There's no other way. And one of those iconic things is, of course, also the mile 1 marker. I think it's a bit of a joke, but it's also kind of a cool statement along the lines of, hey, you've done a mile now, but there's still 2,653 or something. I don't exactly know how far it was in 2015. And yes, it is a bit of a joke, but it's also like a reminder of, hey, you're really on your way now. And of course, it's cool to finally see the thing and to finally be on the way. And yeah. So it was relatively green when we started the trail in the desert. And that was something that actually surprised me. I hadn't had any experience of desert hiking before, and I was a bit cautious, a bit skeptical because, of course, I wasn't familiar with the lack of water from Europe, from European hikes. We have water everywhere, and yes, I'm not so good with heat either, but we were lucky. In April, it's often very, very dry, but we had experienced the wettest spring ever, and in the desert, that's really lucky. I would rather not have had the wettest autumn later in Washington, but in the desert, it was, of course, quite good, because the more it rains, the more water you have available, which is logical, of course. And yes, for us, it was, of course, nice, because we had a lot of green plants, a lot more flowers, and yeah, very much at the beginning, we also passed some cool rock formations, and I always like to climb those. It's just something I like to do. Here we are in a desert, in a forest. I think it's just so bizarre because, I didn't realize that there were so many trees in the desert, and when I saw that, it was a real surprise. We had real desert on the first day, or at least what I think is real desert. And then somehow you turn around the corner and suddenly you're in a small wooded area because there is water underground or whatever. It's basically like an oasis, I don't know. And it was really, really nice to have this change on such short distances. And another very striking waypoint on the first day is this train crossing, of course. I think everyone knows it. And I think it's also the only time you walk over a railway track on the trail. I don't know. I remember that you walk under one, but I think that's the only one when you cross it. And of course, it's kind of iconic, and everybody knows it. Everyone takes pictures with it, and everyone walks on it for a bit. And yeah, it is used, but we didn't see any train that day. But of course, it was still cool to see this point on the first day. Lots of familiar, famous things that you hit on the first day already. And yes, as I said, it was relatively wet, and so we were lucky enough to have lots of flowers, lots of blossoms. The cacti were in bloom. We were traveling at the end of April, as I said. In March, I think it's usually the case that there aren't that many flowers because it's colder. Many people start in March, but we started at the end of April, and that gave us this beautiful desert in bloom, and I thought that was incredibly beautiful. People like to rank the individual parts of the trail at the end, and the desert was definitely in second place for me after Washington. I definitely liked the desert more than the Sierras, and it was just something that I had not experienced before, and I loved it. I thought it was very beautiful. And we were also lucky on the first day. It wasn't that hot yet, and it was overcast, and we were able to acclimatize slowly because it would get really hot later. And for us cold Europeans, it was much better to have it that way than having the brutal heat on the first day already. When we took our first break on the trail with a beautiful view, I had my first treats, and what you see me eating here is cheese in a can. You Americans probably know it, but I had never seen this thing before, and I saw it in the store, and I said to myself, okay, I need to eat this. I did not think that it was good, but I thought it was so weird and so, please excuse me, so American that this would be the perfect cultural experience. Well, it's actually not that bad. I mean, it tastes like burger cheese, but as a spread, and I did enjoy it. I don't think I would eat it at home, but to be honest, I bought a second can, I think, in Oregon, and it was a nice snack for the first day on a PCT. So, and then we found these great trees here on the first day already. We saw them quite often later, and I didn't know them. I had never seen them before, and I thought that they somehow had some kind of parasite. You know how parasites also occur in the plant kingdom, or, you know, plants infest other plants, or fungals infest plants, and because it looked like the bark was covered with like a red layer, I thought this was something that does not belong there. But I learned that these things are called manzanita trees, and that they actually do look like this, and I thought that was super cool. It is something that I really like when I discover things in nature that I have never seen before and that look somehow special. And I just find that really beautiful, and I was able to experience that here with the manzanita trees on the first day, and I liked it. And so we spent our first night in Hauser Creek, which is, I don't know exactly, I think it's like 15 miles from the starting point, which is a relatively long distance for the first day, but that's what most people do. There are some freaks that run straight to Lake Morena, but that's 20 miles with a steep climb in the end, and I think this is pretty tough for the first day, so we just walked to Hauser Creek. When I arrived, there were only 3 people at the campsite so far, and I then walked straight up to these 3 people, and one of them said, "Hey, you just walked through Poison Oak." And I was like, "What?" "Yeah, I just walked through Poison Oak, and Poison Oak is a poisonous plant that can cause an allergic skin reaction due to, I don't know, what exactly, maybe nettles or traces or whatever." And I was wearing trousers, luckily, but the stuff is supposed to stick to clothes too, and the guy told me that I have actually to wash them, which of course was not possible in the middle of the desert. I mean, I did have some drinking water with me, but of course I needed that for drinking. And yeah, I was a bit crestfallen that this thing happened on the first day, because there are these horror stories that people are laid up for a week or something. I was like, shit, now I fucked it up straight away. But, well, there was nothing you could do. I patted the trousers a bit, and I just hoped that there was nothing there. And then the next day, yes, I thought about washing the trousers, but then somehow there was nothing at all, and then I just left it and nothing happened. But back to the night here at Hauser Creek. We arrived, and gradually everyone else trickled in, and I'd say there were about 20 hikers in the end, maybe in 12 tents or so, and it was really... It had a bit of a feel like being on a festival, you know, seeing all these colorful tents, and everyone was walking around between the tents and talking to each other. It was a really nice atmosphere, totally relaxed. Everyone somehow got on straight away, and that's something that really impressed me, how quickly you can get very personal, very intimate with people there, which is simply because this whole getting to know phase that you normally have when you get to know people, where you start by talking about random things, that is completely absent, because everyone is experiencing the same thing. Everyone is doing the same thing. Everyone has the same thoughts. Where do I sleep? Where do I get food? Where do I get water? Maybe the views, the animals, I don't know, everything. And, you know, above all of that, what also always brings people together, no matter what the situation is, everyone is pursuing the same goal. And that's something I realized very quickly, which leads to incredibly good relationships, and I found that exciting. And well, yeah, we got into really good conversations here at Hauser Creek on the first day, and we then had nice dinner together and talked a little bit about equipment, about the hike that everybody planned, but it then started to rain pretty soon, and we all disappeared into our tents. And yes, then the getting wet began, because the rain was pretty heavy, and we had the top tent Double Rainbow, a very good tent, I think, but it's a single wall tent, and in tents there is always condensation from breathing air, from sweating and so on, which condenses on the ceiling, and normally it runs down the ceiling and drips out at the bottom. But it rained so heavily that night that the pattering of the rain pushed the condensation back onto us. And yes, we got completely wet. The sleeping bags were wet, we were wet, and that was a bit of a downer on the first night. And we thought, well, what are we going to do now? Because, you know, it's not like the trail is dry all the time or anything. And luckily there was a guy next to us who had the same tent. He didn't bring it on a PCT, but he owned it, and he said that we have to buy a liner, which is a second wall that you can stick in there, and that would catch the backflash of the condensation and keep us dry. And yeah, well, luckily we were on our way to the PCT kickoff, which was an event that used to take place annually, but unfortunately no longer exists, where there was all kinds of information about the trail, about water, about wildlife, and so on. And there was also an incredible amount of food, and all the cottage gears suppliers such as Z-Packs, Tarp Tents, Six Moon Designs, and so on. They all were there with their stuff and sold their stuff. And here you can see all the tarp tents from Henry Shires. And in any case, we spoke to him, told him our problem from the first night, and he said, yes, you need the liner. So we bought it, hung it up, and we didn't get wet on the second night, even though it was raining. So that was perfect timing that it happened on the first night, because we could still buy the item directly from him on site. And otherwise we would have had to order it online, and who knows when we would have got it. Well, yes, as I said, there was plenty to eat, and that's how I got my tray name, Eat It Up. That's what it was. There were burritos, and I finished another hiker's burrito because she couldn't take anymore, and then she said, you're the Eat It Up German, and that's how I was called, Eat It Up. So, and then after the PCT kickoff, I think we slept for another night at Lake Morena. That's when things really got going. And that was the moment when we really realized that we were about to embark on a journey that might last 5 to 6 months. And it was an incredible feeling, because you do not know at all what's coming, but you kind of do. You know, actually, you do know you want to walk to Canada, and if everything goes well, it will work out, but you have no idea what will happen in between. And that was incredibly exciting to realize that at that moment, that we were really on our way. We were lucky again. It was wonderful weather for hiking. It wasn't too hot. It was maybe, 25 degrees Celsius or something. I don't know exactly what that's in Fahrenheit, but it's very moderate. And it was a bit cloudy, and that was of course perfect for getting into this desert setting. Yes, and we had these wonderful views on the very first day, just marvelous. And what we also had on the very first day, real day after our first day from the border to Morena, was trail magic. Trail magic here in the form of Easter eggs, so of course we were delighted. Chocolate always works. But here in the corner, this colorful one, you probably know it, it's called Cadbury Cream Egg. And for my European tongue, it was way too sweet. I could not eat it. It was filled with, I think, fondant, the stuff that you put on cake. I don't know if that's the English word for it, but we call it that in Europe. And it was so incredibly sweet. I mean, it's really no wonder so many people in the US have diabetes. It really wasn't eatable for me. But the chocolate was very nice, and it was our first on-trail magic. And trail magic, for those who don't know, probably all of you know, but I don't know, comes in different forms, but it's always some kind of voluntary kindness from people to hikers. And that can be something to eat, something to drink or ride, or people let you spend the night at their place, like Scout and Frodo. And yes, for me, the best trail magic was always when I stumbled across a box by chance in the middle of nowhere, and there was something tasty inside, especially when it was cool drinks. That was really the best thing, when you find a cool box in the middle of nowhere and there's chilled drinks inside. That's so marvelous. You can't imagine it if you have never hiked an extensive time in the desert. It was really awesome. And and then we went on, and the landscape, of course, was really super beautiful and varied. And it was just great to hike there with these incredible views over the mountains and these great trees that you could see. And what I also liked, in the beginning, it's a bit more crowded on the trail. It's a lot more social experience than later on, because most people start in a similar time window, and then it equalizes out over time. And I like that because, by that I was able to experience these first days, weeks together with other people who also were in the same situation than I was. I don't think that I have met someone right at the beginning who already had thru-hiked the PCT. I met a guy who did a section hike a year before, but other than that, we were all first-time PCT thru-hikers, and it was great to experience these exciting first days together. So during breaks, we kind of automatically formed little groups, and we kind of got together, and it was really pleasant because, as I said, we were immediately on a good level in conversations, and we talked about all sorts of things. We swapped our food, we looked at what everybody was planning and what everybody was up to, and so on. And yeah, that was just super nice, and I really enjoyed that, especially at the beginning when you're still a bit more excited and a bit more insecure, perhaps, when you first have to familiarize yourself so that you can share it with others. It was really nice. It was the same thing during the nights. You can see a few tents here, and on the first few nights it was always the case that we came together with lots of people. For me, it was like being there was comparable to seeing a band live for the first time that you've been following for years but have never been to a concert. And then you suddenly see them on stage, these people in real life. You see them, hear them play the music in real life that you might have heard hundreds of times on a CD or Spotify or whatever. And I think that's a comparable feeling because you feel quite connected to the trail through your research, and then being there is just like a wow experience. And I think everyone felt that way because it was always carried over a bit in the air. But slowly we got into the groove. We always walked like 10 or 15 miles at the beginning to get into it slowly so that we didn't overdo it at the start. After all, we didn't want to injure ourselves or end the adventure early. That would have been a shame, of course. But I can remember that we simply had an incredibly good time on those first days. And that was our first town stop, if you like. It's actually more like a small mountain resort called Mount Laguna. And I think the trail goes right past it. I'm not quite sure, but I think it does. And here you can see one of those cool boxes I just mentioned. There were just chilled sodas in there, Coke, cream soda, lemonade, I don't know, all kinds of things. And oh yeah, we really enjoyed that. By then it was already relatively warm, and then sipping an ice cold Coke was just marvelous. I do love that the Americans have ice everywhere. It's not a thing in Europe, and that was just so great. Over here are hiker boxes. You're probably familiar with the system, but if not, if you have something that you don't need anymore, you can put it in there and other hikers can take it out. Can be food, can be gear. I also took books out of them from time to time, and there was one thing in Mount Laguna that I still remember, which was this saying the trail provides, that the trail gives you what you need. And there was a situation where I was in the in the outdoor store of Mount Laguna, and I was looking for sun gloves because I used trekking poles and I got sunburned on my knuckles. And they had sun gloves, but they all didn't fit. They had closed fingertips, and the fingers were either too small or too long compared to the, I don't know how you call it, the base of my hand. And so another hiker that I had met before saw me there and said, "Hey, do you need sungloves?" And I was like, "Yes." And she said, "I was about to put mine in the hiker box because they don't fit me, and you can try." And she gave them to me, and they fit perfectly. And I still have these sungloves, and I still use them. I wore them every day on the PCT, and that is something that I really... It was like one of those, the trail provides miracles, which I still have very fond memories of this situation and of Tumbleweed, who gave me her sungloves. And then we arrived at our first big highlight, which was absolutely incredible. It was like this. We walked through, I don't know, one of those other little woods, little small forests. And then I went around the corner and suddenly had this view. And I couldn't find words. I can't find words now. I'd heard people talking about desert view before, a few days before we hit that thing, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where it was and when it was coming and so on. But so it was a real complete surprise. And of course the photos don't do it justice, you know what I mean, but you can already see this endless expanse into the desert, and was so amazing. I came around the corner and it really took my breath away. This beauty, this raw beauty, this vastness, this unknown landscape. It's a real desert there now, and I had never seen anything like that. A friend of mine who has been to Africa quite often once saw the photos and he said, wow, these are African conditions. And I was in Morocco later, and yes, I can definitely confirm that. It was absolutely crazy. And then, of course, we took a long break there and soaked up the view, so to speak. And then we walked on, and the path went on for a long time with this view. And it was an incredibly awesome afternoon to hike with this panorama. And there's a saying that every day on the PCT is like a postcard. And it really is. There isn't really a day when there isn't at least one postcard motive. And yes, we walked into the evening, and we often did that until after sunset because it was pleasantly cool and you could experience this world when it was going to sleep. And it was a mystical time, a very beautiful time of the day. And then we also saw our first cool animals, of course. For example, this one here, a horned lizard. Interesting animal. I had never seen it before. I read about it later, and they have a very interesting defense mechanism. They can shoot blood out of their eye, which somehow makes them smelly to predators or something like that. And above all, I just thought it was really beautiful. They're like, I don't know, maybe 20 centimeters tall or so, and I think they look like little dragons, which were totally beautiful. We also completed mile 50, the 50th mile, and yes, that's not much at all. But especially at the beginning, you experience so much, you take so many photos, you absorb everything, and that settles down over time. But especially at the beginning, you're simply flooded with stimuli. You absorb and experience and see and perceive everything, and that really was an absolute privilege. As you can hear, it's quite windy. It was actually like that all the time in the desert, and there was always a good föhn blowing, as we would say in Europe. And yes, I say it again, super windy. It was really, really windy there. Yes, and above all, very sunny. Very sunny. And we were gradually moving into the real desert, and shade was really the rarest commodity next to water. So water, there was the PCT water report back then. That's no longer the case, I think. I think it's all now in the Faroed app. But back then, it was a PDF that we downloaded every time we were in town or whenever we had Wi-Fi. And there were all the water sources listed with information about the flow rate, the exact location, and stuff like that. And then, yes, that's how we planned our stages, from water point to water point. And then we always thought about how much water we had to take with us, how many kilometers we had to cover, where we were camping. Do we camp dry? Do we camp near a water source? How much water do we need? I think I had a maximum capacity of 6 liters, and I often had it full in the desert, which is of course brutally heavy, 6 kilos. Yes, and shade, as I said, is the other second commodity, which is very rare in the desert, which is why we were very happy that we had these umbrellas with us, which we always put up during our breaks and hid underneath. We've just filled up with water again, and now we've been hiking for some time with this magnificent view. Our destination for today is a campsite, a boulder campsite as it's called. So this is a kind of campsite between various boulders, and it should be about 2.5 miles to get there, and we hope that we can find a spot there. Then we have a delicious dinner and go to sleep as the sun goes down, just like we do every day here. It really is like this. Everybody goes to bed when the sun goes down and everyone wakes up when it rises again. Very relaxed. We had actually planned to walk only 10 miles today, but now we're back up to 15 miles, 14, 15 miles. Tomorrow we want to walk a similar distance, and then the day after tomorrow we go to Julian. Well, that was me translating what I was saying in this German video. Well, as I was saying in the video, I was saying that we always go to bed with the sun, which is not entirely true. We sometimes do that, but also we oftentimes go to sleep when the sun is already down. But then it's still twilight, and I think this is such beautiful when the landscape sinks into the sunlight, sinks into the evening light, just wonderful. And yes, we arrived at the boulder camp and we found a good spot. I think I film down there right now. Yeah, that's our tent right there, wedged in there. I think it's just awesome to wake up with a view like this and having breakfast on a rock in the morning. It's such a feeling of freedom that you can't even imagine if you haven't experienced it before. I have that on every tour that I make. So when I wake up in the morning and I'm the only person there, or maybe I see one or two other people or something, and some birds are chirping or a stream is rumbling or something, when the morning air still smells slightly foggy, it's just wonderful. Yes, but then little by little we really took our first steps into the real desert, and what can I say, it was absolutely amazing, but also very, very hard. It was really, really hot, and I said it at the beginning, I am not so good with heat. But what are you going to do? That's just part of it, and the views made it all worthwhile, even if it was really tough hiking at times because of the heat. We then switched to hiking in the morning, taking a longer siesta during the day, and then hiking again in the evening. That worked quite well, and actually everybody else did that. There were only a few crazy people who would walk in a blazing sun at noon or so. That would also be counterproductive because you would have to carry immense loads of water with you to do it. At least I would have to do it. I remember one day on the PCT I drank 10 liters of water, and imagine drinking that much every day and carrying it. Yes, so this was one of my absolute favorite camps, especially because we experienced this amazing sunset there, and we set up there, and short time later someone came by and said, perfect camp spot. He was a bit grumpy because we were already there, and but he found a similarly good spot a little further up. And we just sat up there and looked into the distance, watched the sunset, had dinner, had talks, and it was just an incredible night that I remember often. I think about it very often, about this specific evening, because it was such a peaceful and free experience to spend this beautiful place, this beautiful sunset with my friends. And I just enjoyed that. The weather was pleasant again because it was naturally getting colder in the evening, but the sun was still up and illuminated us in this orange light, which was absolutely special. And yeah, at some point we just went to bed after a full day of hiking, and that was really, really nice. Well, here we can see a few desert pictures of me walking with the umbrella. It was really practical to be able to walk with it. And then we went to Julian. Here near these beautiful mountains is Scissors Crossing, which is a road crossing with the trail. And from there, I think it's about, 10 miles or so into Julian. And the first city, I'd say, that you can reach on a PCT. And this nice gentleman here gave us a ride, a hitchhike into Julian. And in Julian, we bought a few things from the grocery store, food for the next stage. And we went out for burgers and fries, and that's when I learned that Americans don't eat mayonnaise with their fries, but mustard. And I thought that was a shame, because I really like mayonnaise. And I found the mustard thing a bit strange somehow, so I didn't eat it. I just took the ketchup. But the burger was delicious, the fries were delicious, the Coke was delicious, and above all, what was also very delicious, of course, was the apple pie, which, strangely enough, I didn't take a photo of. But here at Mom's Apple Pie, I think it's some very famous apple pie store that bake lots of cakes and also ship them out, but have this this cafe here in Julian. And every PCT Thru-hiker gets a piece of cake with a scoop of ice cream and a drink for free. And of course we had one. And it was, what can I say, a really, really good apple pie. I think it was my first American apple pie. Back then, it was not trendy to bake American baked goods in Germany. Now it is more trendy. But yeah, I think it was the first time I had an American apple pie, and it was super delicious. And yeah, we really enjoyed it for free on top of all of that. And how can you say no to that? Yes, and then we walked around Julian a bit, enjoyed the day, charged our phones, met a few more people we somehow got to know beforehand. And then we went out again at some point in the evening, and it looked like this. Yes, just a few hikers crammed in without seat belts, of course, without proper seats, which was a very new experience for me as a German, where we always wear the seat belts and never sit on the back of a truck or whatever. And the driver was a guy named Devilfish. We would see him a lot more often later on. Back in 2015, I don't know if he's still doing it, but in 2015 he was living out of his car and drove along with the bubble of hikers. And he just offered rides to town and to trail, and he would just wait at the road crossings and see if people needed rides. And we used that a lot. It was a really great service. He even took us to Tahoe once for quite a long drive. And we finally arrived back at the trail, and also the guy who gave us a ride at first was there again, and there was trail magic again. So there were a few people here with their camper, and they offered shade and drinks and sandwiches and very good conversations, company, and was just super nice. It was really you feel a bit like a self-imposed homeless person somehow, but you know you're already a little bit run down, and you get there, and yes, the people who live in the caravan are super cool, and everybody hangs out there sitting in the dirt, and somehow the atmosphere was so great, and nobody did want to leave because there was a very steep climb of, I think, 1,000 feet waiting for everybody, and no one wanted to do that while the sun was still up. And so we just stayed there and had a good time, and waited for the heat to go. And of course it was great to have a snack and drink and a chat, and that was the first part of our hike back then, the first week of the trail from the border to Julian, so to speak. And yes, if you liked it, please leave me a comment. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'd be happy to answer them for you. If you have run the trail before and would like to share your memories of the first week, which was really overloaded in my case, please leave them with me. I look forward to hear from you and what you have to report. Or if you want to walk the trail yourself at some point and maybe want to have some more information from a Thru-hiker, I'd be happy to share my knowledge with you. And yeah, subscribe to my channel if you'd like to be part of the next videos too. Also for the other hikes I have done and that I will also plan in the future. This summer, for example, I'm going to a very similar area here in Europe that matches the Sierras. I won't tell you where I'm going yet, but I'm sure it will be great. And of course, I will do vlogging about this trail. So if you're interested in through hiking abroad, just subscribe and you will see. Until then, we see each other in part 2 in the second week on the PCT 10 years later.